I love this one. This person wanted to remain anonymous, and so we're going to call them unicorn because we've never had a question this beautiful, and you have to be a unicorn. I mean, nobody is this smart, right? So let's read it. It says, I am a caring person. In today's world, that kind of feels like a unicorn sometimes. I am a caring person and am very open about my own struggles with family and friends. At the same time, when family or friends who are less open confide in me, they're less open. When family or friends who are less open confide in me, I have trouble knowing when to keep it confidential. Okay, but they're less open, but they are confiding. So I'm assuming that when they do, that's kind of a special deal for them. That's kind of a big deal. If they're less open in general, but they confide in you, which is a compliment to you, actually, they feel that you're safe. Have trouble knowing when to keep it confidential. Is it always gossip when the intention of sharing with someone else is to help, not hurt? It's a great question because it gets into so many different dynamics um, of keeping confidences and who we talk to, as well as that's one side of it. We do want to keep our confidences. Um, you know, People need to be trusted, and I don't know if I just got this from being a psychologist, or just it was always something that seemed really, really important to me. But I know that one of my highest values is if somebody tells me something in confidence, that goes in a lockbox, right? They're sharing the treasure of their heart with you. And so they want that to be sort of a safe deposit box where it's not like they're leaving it out on the counter, they're locking it up somewhere safe when they tell you in confidence. So the general rule is we don't share stuff that people have told us that is important to them to keep confidential. Okay. A. Now, B, it sounds like a lot of times you feel the pressure to know kind of when that is. And I would probably, if I could climb into your head, because you seem like an emotionally aware, sensitive person, I am going to guess that said conversations fall into three categories. One is category A, no problem. Oh yeah, I was talking to Abby the other day. Do you know that they went to Hawaii and blah 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 blah? Or you know, um, oh, I talked to so and so. They're in the hospital. You might want to give them a call. There are certain things that are not confidential. They're just sort of like that's how community works. We couldn't have a community if we couldn't spread things. I mean, COVID's not the only thing that spreads. I mean, good things spread too, right? We talk about stuff. That's good. Category A, where you're sure. And a lot of times we're sure. Category C, pretty simple. They've said, I wouldn't want you to share this with anybody. Um, but I got to let you know, I was just diagnosed with something. And they've named it as something in confidence. Okay. Here's where you get in trouble. Category B, where I don't know. And as you have rightly pointed out, there's another factor in here. When if you're going to tell somebody stuff in category B where you're not sure if that's okay with a person or not, there's an intent because sometimes people hear somebody shares a struggle, say they're having with another person in the family or the company or whatever, and what do they immediately do? Okay, well, that's great. Uh, Great that you told me that because I can pray for you or I can help or whatever. They hang up the phone, then immediately, you know what? I just talked to Sue, and the motive that they have to do that is either a trying to create pseudo intimacy because talking to another person about another person. Sometimes people do that to kind of feel like they're on the end and they're giving them something special and blah 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 blah, and that's BS. what you're doing is you're using that other person for your own gratification. Okay. So if that happens, you know, whatever that motive is, that's just not okay. That's that's just not okay. The other motive and intention that usually is really bad is when it's trying to be divisive. You're trying to form a coalition over here against that person or get them sideways with each other. The psychologists call that triangulation. Bible calls it gossip or divisiveness, but it's all the same. It doesn't go anywhere good. So first thing you have to do is look at your motive. Okay. Now, if you look at motive, category B becomes much more easier to deal with because you look at your motive and you say, you know what, so and so told me this. I'd really like to let Susie know about that because I think she could be really helpful, or I think she might know some people that could put us in touch with some people, and this, that, and the other. You see that motive? Okay. Now, if I know my motive is good, then what would keep me from picking up the phone and calling the person and saying, after we talked, I had a thought. I think Susie might be helpful with this. Do you mind if I talk to her? See, now we're on positive ground. You're not with a bad motive. You're not going to call and say, hey, you know what? I'd like to go gossip about you over here with Susie. So I would say, ask yourself, what category am I in? And if I'm not sure, then I either keep my mouth shut or I check it out. But see, if you have a good motive, you're probably going to check it out because you actually want to be helpful, but you don't feel to be help feel free to be helpful unless you go talk to them. Okay. Now, a cousin to this, and you get this a lot, it's very important if somebody hurts you to talk to that person and not somebody else. But sometimes you need to process it with somebody in order. Let's say you're struggling with you got a problem with dad and you want to talk to him about it and this, that, and the other, but you don't really know how, and you're really hurting, and dad's not listening, and you're really wounded about it. And so, but your sister really understands. So you talk to your sister. But the motive of talking to your sister is for your sister to help you to deal with dad, not to create division between sister and dad. And so you have to look at the motive and you have to look at the fruit of the conversation. Sometimes we need to process stuff with a third party before we go back in and talk to the person. Okay. There's nothing wrong with that if the motive is good and the fruit of it is good. Sometimes we need healing. I mean, if you've been hurt by somebody, what do? Sometimes you go to a psychologist and you process that pain, you get healing because the hurtful party is not going to heal you. You need a third party. But it's not a relationship you're trying to break up. So a lot of things come into factor with this unicorn, and I'm really glad you brought this up because if we could stop a lot of this divisiveness and a lot of this triangulation and check ourselves, I have this happen all the time. There's mutual relationships and kind of think about what do you do when so and so does, and I have to check myself. Would that really be helpful? I don't want to talk to him. It's not going to be helpful. If there's not some good reason to do it, I like keeping confidences. So there you go. And here's the thing you want to do as well. If you're thinking about this in the big issue, like we talked about down there where I come from in the South, well, you got to have people whose character you can trust for your own healing. So we're talking about your character being trustworthy here. But it's also really important. Think about this. You are only going to heal to the degree that you have a safe, immunized, germ free healing space to be healed in, right? I mean, I can't get surgery without an operating room and a doctor. So all of your healing, we know, is going to be relational, right? Because it takes relationship to heal things. Therefore, if you don't have relationships that are 100% confidential, you really don't have an operating room to get healed in.